Those guys are hardcore. All right, we're here at Club Skidoo 2020 with three of Skidoo's brand ambassadors. And we have the Skidoo Summit X with Expert Package behind us here. These guys were highly involved with coming up with the ideas and developing this sled and then spending a lot of time testing and giving feedback. We've got Carl Kuster, Rob Alford, and Tony Jenkins. Carl, start off here. What do you think of this sled now that we've got the production unit ready to go?
It really is a fun ride, and it's a wild ride. Like, it's the closest thing you're going to get to a dirt bike. You know, you can stand it up on the end, turn it around, and go out the exact same track you came in on, you know, or just ride it kind of with that dirt bike mentality. Like, when you want to go through the trees right there, right now, and it'll carve and do it. And it has good stability on the side hills, you know, and that's something that kind of comes from the front end, not the rear end, actually.
Rob, what do you see in the ride that you've had on it? The biggest difference between the Summit X and the Expert?
Well, first thing I noticed is it was just the crazy maneuverability. Like, I was climbing, doing a side hill, I was going along like this, and then I wanted to go back the other direction, and I just gave her a healthy amount of throttle, and instantly was going back the other way. So I was going up the hill, doing these crazy maneuvers, which, you know, I think that shorter tunnel just allows it to not hang up and frees up a lot of horsepower, so it just will just turn on a dime, which is awesome.
So what is it about that shorter tunnel that's letting you do that?
Well, it evacuates a lot of snow, so the snow doesn't bind up in the tunnel, so it frees the horsepower, and then the tunnel isn't sticking out, so it doesn't drag on the snow, so then it can dig down deeper and then bring the sled up on command and maneuver it easier.
Tony, what's been your favorite feature of all the updates that they've done on this Expert? If you had to rank them, like 1 through 5, what order would you put them in?
Obviously, the tunnel would be my number one, and then the fact that the front end has changed with the stiffer calibration and the way that the ski dampening rubber is built basically keeps the ski a lot flatter, and it prevents the sled from washing out. A lot of the focus and people thought that the sled was washing out because of T-motion, but when the focus was actually needed to be in the front. Those are probably my first categories, but the best part about this sled is it's a sled that a consumer can buy from a dealer, and they don't have to touch a single thing. It's ready to ride.
Okay, so talk a little more about what's happening on the front end. So they changed the spindle, the ski rubber, and a little bit of the ski, but what does that do?
Basically, in the Summit X as a generic sled, what was happening is the ski was kicking back too far, and when you were side hilling, the ski would pivot back, causing the sled to kind of wash out. And now that the ski is laying flatter on the hillside, it's allowing the sled to keep pursuing forward.
Carl, talk a little more about the snow that's coming back through the tunnel. You and I have had a conversation about that.
Really, the difference is any snowmobile with a snow flap on it, you know, retains the snow, and the snow will kind of stop at the snow flap. It does, yes, go by on the lower part where it's below the flap, but it'll stop at the flap, and then the snow starts to compile there. And then, like Rob says, it goes back over the track, and the snowmobile has to chew it a second or a third or a fourth time, you know, like. So what happens is it steals the propulsion, I guess you could say, from the snowmobile. Whereas if you get rid of the snow flap, the snow exits, and the sled doesn't have to re-chew that snow going on top of the tunnel. So now that's extra weight, and it takes a lot of power. And then without the snow flap, none of that happens, so it gets to crawl on the sled or onto the snow easier because it's more efficient. You know, it's carrying less weight, it's evacuating all the snow instead of having to re-chew it. You know, and it's really pretty simple. But where it really shines is on the slow stuff, right kind of in the deep snow, like before, where you kind of get stuck, you know, when the sled's, you know, digging a big hole because you're wide open and going through tight trees and it's deep snow or whatever. You know, this thing will just keep going and going and going and going, and it just will inch its way across whatever. Like, it's pretty hilarious to see the steep terrain and the kind of trouble you can get into and out of on it, you know, and that's what makes it fun.
The sled is being more efficient by evacuating all that excess snow, and you're not recycling the snow over and over again. And another cool thing too is, like before in previous years, when the sled was going to get stuck, when you're recycling that snow, it basically builds that ice wall in front of the track, so then you can't pursue forward. The sled just wants to keep augering down, but now that there's no snow being built in the front of the track, it's able to keep driving forward.
So a shorter tunnel is not just a shorter tunnel. A shorter tunnel is kind of a bigger factor than that in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, there's a lot of key elements to this shorter tunnel. Like a lot of people are saying, oh, whoop-de-doo, it's a shorter tunnel. But the fact that the way that snow is evacuating from the sled is a huge, huge turning point.
Rob, shock package, it's a different revalve or a different valve spec. It's a little stiffer, keeps you higher in the stroke. How do you like that?
Yeah, they got like a totally revalve shock package. They got a wicked KYB 36 piggyback in the rear, and then Shima coated front shocks, and it's just like an aggressive expert package, just like it sounds for an expert rider. Like I hopped on it and just rallied it, and I was like, this valving's perfect. I was really stoked on it actually. So it's the kind of sled I could just hop on and I don't do anything to it. I just go ride it. Whereas all my other sleds, I'm always like changing the seat, or I'm changing the bars, or I'm doing this and changing the suspension. And this thing, I was like, don't have to do that.
And so the ski shocks and center shocks are lightweight springs, and they're really rival the titanium, to be honest. Like if you weigh them, there is not much to be had on a titanium spring, if anything. And really it's because they've optimized the spring length. So you look where the spring collar is on the shock. When the shock is bottomed out in full stroke, it's just before coil bind, so like they cut off a fair amount of spring that we didn't need, and so it's just efficiencies.
The lower bar riser really is something I always put on my normal sled, just because having a lower bar riser is better for aggressive riding, because it puts you in more of an athletic position. Like when you're standing up tall, you're kind of like get lazy and you're in the wrong position, and then next thing you know, you're getting stuck or hitting a tree or whatever, right? So I'm always like pushing the lower risers of people who I ride with. And then they got 2 mils shaved off the grips, so it's like a better grip to grab. So you got, when you're riding aggressively, you can notice that. Yeah, all those little features combined, it's like pretty wicked sled. It's like,
so we're all a bunch of enduro riders. We love enduro riding in the summer, and we have a deep passion for it. So when me and Carl and Rob are sitting down discussing the sled, it's like, why don't we provide a sled to the consumer that's just like the KTM 6 days? If it's in a 300 or 350 or 500, like we want a sled that's just like a 6 days edition KTM. So it's race ready, but it's ready for the mountains. There's not one single thing a consumer has to do to this sled to make it ready for the mountains.
Okay, Tony, the adjustable limiter strap, do you play with that very much? Have you tried that out?
Yeah, it's something that you have to learn how to use. It's pretty simple. You can lengthen the limiter strap or shorten the limiter strap. Once you get used to how it works and how to use the mechanism on it, it's actually pretty cool, because when you're climbing a steep hill, you shorten the limiter strap and it keeps the skis glued down. But if you want a sled that's going to wheelie over and be a lot more playful, lengthen the limiter strap. So it all depends on the rider and your scenario. But I think the hard part is people are going to have to learn when to use it, when not to use it.
The thing is, you ride it kind of with like some dirt bike mentality, like you can really just wheelie it, turn it around and go right back out. Like, so for those low speed wheelie turns, like, man, it makes it way easier to do that kind of stuff.
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And it's super fun. And it's low speed, so you're not really in, the consequence is usually pretty low.
What's the technique to do that stand-up turnaround maneuver?
Well, you want to just pop the clutch, get your butt back on the seat. Well, really, it's a lot like that. You just kind of get up in the front, give it a good shot of gas, and pull back, and it wheelies right up, and just look where you're going to go. And honestly, try it out on the flat in the open, and it doesn't take that much for practice, really. And you get turned around, and you can go right out the same track. Like you get good, you can land and put your carbides so they go out the exact same place they came in on. Like,
You definitely have to ride it more aggressively, because you're going to be going along and you want to do one of those big wheelie turns. You got to be ready to jump over, and like I was doing more hop overs than I normally do probably, and getting,
good thing
just
you've been doing all that yoga.
All that yoga this summer has really helped out. Yeah.
Thanks, Chelsea.
But yeah, no, you got to ride this thing aggressively and stay on the gas, and it's a lot of fun to ride.